रेडी। ये जो आपको सेट मिलेगा ये आपको एसएससी सीएनडी ग्रेड टेस्ट नंबर 94 के नाम से मिल जाएगा। C&D ग्रेड टेस्ट 94 @100 भी होगा ये और @80 पे भी होगा। रेडी, start it. There has been some reference to the improvement in our economic situation also. We find that we have made good progress in production. We were faced equally with a difficult situation so far as cloth was concerned. There was a deficit of food and there was also shortage of cloth. I do remember the scenes that we had to witness in several cities where people had to stand in queues for hours together for 2 meters of very ordinary cloth. But now the situation is quite changed. We have produced much cloth and we are in a position to export cloth. During the British period, we were required to import cloth, but now we are in a position to export cloth. After partition, we were faced with the question of raw material, namely cotton. We had cotton mills, but cotton remained in Pakistan. Even that problem has been solved. We had placed before us a target for more production of cotton, and not only has that target been achieved, but it has been achieved in shorter period to the satisfaction of all people in the country. From this survey, sir, you will find that everybody should be convinced that we are making good progress in the realization of the objectives of the 5-year plan. Then there is a reference that in several essential commodities we have got increased production. This cannot be denied. In spite of this increased production, I must admit we have not been able to solve the question of unemployment. But efforts are being made to ease the situation so far as this question is concerned. The main thing to which I would like to refer is that the President was pleased to say very plainly that so far as cottage industries were concerned, we have not been able to make good progress. As a matter of fact, very little progress has been made. If in this country we have to solve the question of unemployment, we must take very seriously to the development of cottage industries. That alone will solve this problem of unemployment. We want to increase production, but we want to take to such means for increasing our production as would be man absorbing and not man saving, as have been resorted to by the Western countries. That alone will solve our problem to a very great extent. If we organize our cottage industries, if we take to the spirit of Swadeshi, I have no doubt we will solve the problem of unemployment to a great extent. Then, sir, a reference has been made to certain additional projects which have been included in the 5-year plan. There was a great demand from Maharashtra to include this project in the 5-year plan. A couple of years ago, there was a conference presided over by my colleague from the district, the present Revenue Minister of Maharashtra. He had presided over it, and there was a unanimous demand supported by practically the entire people from Maharashtra that this project should be included in the 5-year plan. I take this opportunity to congratulate the Government of India and the Government of Maharashtra for having seen to it that this project is in Maharashtra is included in the 5-year plan. The President's address makes reference to the improvement of our transport and communications. Our increased production leads to the question of better transport facilities. The agricultural production is on the increase, but sir, if there is no betterment of our transport facilities, this increased production in agriculture will not benefit the agriculturist. In my part of the country, even now, this situation prevails. The production there is on the increase, but the agriculturists are suffering on account of inadequate facilities of railway transport. I was glad to find from the President's address that the railways are thinking of opening even new lines very soon. It has also been said that so far as locomotives and rolling stock are concerned, the manufacture of these is going on very satisfactorily, and we have made good progress in this respect during the last few years. Any nation can be proud of this achievement. Then there is a reference to the housing conditions. We can very well remember the scenes that we were required to witness immediately after partition. Thousands and tens of thousands of our brethren came to this country from Pakistan. It was a very serious question as to how to house them. But the day has come when the question has practically been solved, or it can at least be said that we are near the solution of the question. 72 crores of rupees have been spent during the last few years in constructing houses for the refugees, and in this very city we are witnessing an exhibition where we can see the models of cheap and decent houses. If these cheap houses are constructed for the refugees, it will provide shelter for them at a low cost. Now, I would like to say that with this measure we are now adopting, to my mind, it will not be possible to have this system or any other system functioning effectively. The number of clauses that we have included are so restrictive and rigid that it will not be possible for any system to function in this country. If at all it is able to function, it will be able to function with a lot of difficulties. It will be said afterwards that the industrial sector, particularly the private sector, has not been able to deliver the goods. I would like to warn the government that if anything happens in the future in which industrial production or production in the private sector has not gone up. It would be not because of any lack of efforts on the part of the private sector, but because of the measure that we are now adopting. I have mentioned several times how this particular bill is very restrictive and how it will hamper the normal growth of companies in this country. It is a pity that when we are on the threshold of the 10th 5-year plan, such a measure should be passed in this house. ये जो आपको डिक्टेशन बोली गई है, ये 100 की स्पीड में डिक्टेट किया गया है, फ्लक्चुएशन ना के बराबर है, और ये आपको एसएससी सीएनडी ग्रेड टेस्ट नंबर 94 सॉफ्टवेयर मिल जाएगा. 80 पे लिखेंगे. Ready? Start it. Madam Deputy Chairman, I rise to support the concept of a national housing policy, but I am afraid I cannot lend my wholehearted support to the policy as it has been framed. Madam Deputy Chairman, housing is an issue which should not be looked upon from a partisan angle, and I want to make it clear, make it very clear right in the beginning. I will try, and it will be my effort not to introduce any politics into this question. I want members of both the sides to rise above petty partisan considerations and discuss this fundamental question, this basic issue, in the spirit in which this house should discuss it. Having said this, Madam, I would like to state in the beginning that I am extremely disappointed by the manner in which this document has been drafted and presented to the House. I must confess to this disappointment truly and genuinely. This is an effort on the part of the government to evolve a national housing policy, and it is not a shelter policy. There is a wide difference between shelter and housing, and this is something which has to be clearly understood. Housing constitutes a physical matrix in which human interaction occurs. The houses that people live in touch upon almost every facet of their life and of the society as a whole. Housing, therefore, is not only a social or an economic issue, but it is also a major sociological factor which determines the kind of society that we want to build up and the quality of life of the people who live in that society, who are members of that society. Therefore, Madam, the first point that I would like to make is that when we are discussing the housing policy, we cannot discuss shelter in isolation. The housing policy must include within its ambit the overall economic policy of the government. There must be an indication of the policy frame in which we propose to solve this problem, which is an essential part when we are discussing the national housing policy. This is the first deficiency which I noticed in this document. It does not deal with the policy frame, the economic policy frame in which we propose to tackle this problem. We are talking of slums and we are talking of the pressure on housing or the lack of it in the urban areas. Now, we can talk about it without discussing the shift of population from the rural to the urban areas. Can we talk about it without discussing the kind of economic progress in which we are entering? I am sure that the Honorable Minister is aware of this position, that the honorable members of this House are aware of this position, that in the last few years there has been a tremendous growth in the service sector of our economy. And what has been the result of that? The service sector, which includes hostels, tourism, insurance, and such other forms of economic activity, has attracted large numbers of people into the urban areas. In fact, the rate of urbanization in this country is a part of our economic development, but it is extremely alarming in its proportion. If this is going to be the kind of influx into our cities from the rural areas, then it is very clear that in the urban areas the entire structure is going to collapse under the weight of this influx. And unless, therefore, we have a policy frame which reduces the drift from the rural areas into the urban areas, talking about housing either in the rural areas or in the urban areas does not have any meaning. As a result of that pull, a lot of people are coming into the cities, and on the other hand, there is a push effect in the rural areas because agriculture is lagging behind and unemployment is increasing in the villages, and the people are bound to move into the cities. Therefore, Madam, the first question which I would like to ask the Minister is, in what manner this policy envisages to curb this trend of movement of the rural people into the urban areas, because providing amenities to the urban areas, it is well known, is far more expensive than giving the amenities and the facilities in the rural areas. So this is my first point. The second is that the policy does not define, Madam Deputy Chairman, the size of the problem either as it exists today or the size of the problem as it is going to be in the future. The minister has just now claimed by mentioning various figures, achievements which the government has made. But I would like to say that so far in the last 40 years, the government is merely tinkering with the problem. We have only touched the margin of it. We have never cared to get to the core of the problem. This policy document, if it is implemented, will only be marginally touching the problem. 840 वर्ड के आसपास है, 80 की स्पीड है और ये आपको SSC C D टेस्ट नंबर 94 के नाम से मिल जाएगा. अगर आपको नो कॉमा टाइप करना है इसको तो इसका नंबर होगा 465 केसी सोर्स है.